to the Cappella Podcast, everyone, where we explore the beautiful chaos that is early childhood and parenting. I am your host. My name is Apolline, and I'm thrilled to have you join us today on this episode. Our special guest today is Dr. Simone Alicia, the Self Esteem Doctor. She is an award winning motivational speaker and international self esteem expert. She founded the Self Esteem Doctor Academy. She focuses on mental, spiritual, physical well being for all ages. And today we are going to discuss the importance of self esteem in childhood, practical strategies for parents, and Dr. Simone's holistic approach to well being. Whether you are a parent, a seasoned pro, or just curious about parenting, this episode is for you. So let's dive in and let's all welcome Dr. Simone Alicia to the Capella Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm so excited. And thank you for that intro, Apolline. It was amazing. That's one of the best intros I think I've ever gotten.
Oh, wow. Okay. Thank you.
So
Well, I
good.
would love to start this off by getting to know you a little bit better. So, could you share a little bit about your personal journey and what inspired you to become the self esteem doctor?
For sure. Okay. So it's an interesting story, and I will give you the short version. I definitely think part of it is that I was just born for this. I do believe some of us have a path, and I really think I was born for this. So that's number one. As I grew up as a child myself, dealing with, self-esteem issues, or, maybe I wanted to be shorter because my mom was short and my dad was super tall. I wanted smaller feet, like all these little things. But
Okay.
it never impacted me in this like deep, oh no, I don't love myself, what's wrong with me kind of way. And I
Hmm.
think that's part of like my calling or whatever I came in with. So fast forward that, and I was very tall and very skinny, and I tended to go into solution mode. That was just my gift. Like, oh,
Hmm.
this is a problem. How do I solve it? So I was like, you know what? I'm tall and skinny. I'll be a model. So for a few
Love it.
years, I was modeling, right? And it's
Love
like,
it.
yeah, yeah, that was so I did some modeling, and in the modeling industry, I also didn't take it the way many people would be like, "Oh no, am I good enough?" I was just kind of like, "You're gonna pay me to walk down this runway and make some like, let's go," But I
Love it.
heard people backstage that would tear themselves apart. Like, oh my gosh, I'm so this, I'm so fat, my this, my that. Like everything was wrong, and I was just like, someone's got to teach self-esteem to these folks. Then at the
Hmm.
same time, I was also teaching elementary school, and I had little 8-year-olds coming up to me sometimes. I'm not smart enough. Am I fat? I can't do this. And I'm just like, someone needs to work on self-esteem with these people. And then one day, the two worlds collided together, and I did a fashion show, and I heard the people backstage being mean to themselves, and then we came off the runway, show was over, and a bunch of little kids, I think they were mostly girls, were gathered around saying, I want to be just like them, they're so perfect, and I was like, no, you don't want to be like us or them. You need to be like yourself. And some of them don't like themselves. And like, someone's got to teach self esteem. And then I think that was the day it clicked. And I was like, oh, I am the someone that has to teach self esteem. So that's how it
Oh,
started.
I love this story, and I love how you're mentioning that it starts even in childhood. Because obviously, on this podcast, we're focused a lot on childhood and parenting, and
Of course.
we'll get into those topics later. But I love how from the get go you're also mentioning some children, like 8 year olds,
Yes.
being like, "I'm too fat," or crazy things that they shouldn't be thinking at all.
Thinking.
Um,
Exactly.
so I love how this is also impacting your journey. Another thing that I read about you is that you're a certified practitioner of NLP and
Yes.
metaphysical science. So, can you talk to us a little bit about what that is and how it helps you today as the self esteem doctor and how it impacts your work?
Oh, so good. So, when I first started doing it, I would bring the clients, like they were always children at that point. I would bring them to a runway, and I was building in the modeling part. So I would have them get on the runway and like fix their posture and start walking a certain way, and then start to shift their mindset. Like imagine that you're this person. Imagine you feel this confidence. Like picture it. And one of my mom's friends, who is a clinical psychologist, she was like, if this is what she's interested in, like what's going on in the mind, she should study NLP. So NLP is neuro linguistic reprogramming. And basically, it's how we speak the language of the brain to uh, reprogram our behaviors. So, like, speak the way that your brain will understand, get the information in quick and clear so you can make shifts and make changes. And so I went and studied NLP. And what that helps me to do when I'm doing one-on-one coaching, or even when I'm standing in front of a huge audience, is to help to build up the imagery so your brain will see that picture of what we're trying to recreate, right? Your brain sees in pictures. So I will
Hmm.
figure out what your language style is, what your brain understands best, and speak out to whether it's an audience or an individual so that you can really hear and see it. It makes a difference, makes a quicker change in your mind. So I think it's been an instrumental, like number one key for me, helping people raise their self-esteem is you've got to start seeing yourself differently in your mind's eye first. And then that becomes almost like a GPS and takes you to where you want to go. Then as I was doing that for probably the first decade or so, I started noticing that it was hard to do that without also talking about this deeper I am, this sense of like oneness with everyone and everything and who you really are deep down inside, and started learning about the true self. And so that took me right into metaphysical science. What is
Hmm.
that mechanism that makes it all up? So today I am able to join together kind of all those forces, the power of the mind with NLP, the power of like this inner deeper knowing of self, your higher being. And of course I still tap in some of that modeling with the way you're carrying yourself and the way you
Hmm.
walk and all that, right? So it's like all of those components of my life over the past like 2 decades have come together and have been a really, really effective way for me to help people with their and personal development overall.
I
Yeah,
love
it's been
that.
really good.
I can
Yeah,
actually really
thank
relate
you.
to that because, like, even what I do, it's a culmination of all my different interests. And I feel that you're the same way. So you have different interests that kind of all collide into this one thing. And that's when you found what you're really passionate about. At least I feel that way because when it's like I'm passionate about modeling, but also I see these issues and I see these things, and like, can I bring all of that together and what can it be? And that's
Oh,
just the best. If anyone is wondering or needs some career advice, I guess it's it's unrelated, but when you figure out like what the things are that you love and you figure out a way to make them
mm,
all fit into one thing, then you're probably going
oh.
to love this job for the rest of your life, at least.
Oh, I agree with you so much. I agree with you so much because I remember when I first understood, like, wait a second, I'm the self-esteem doctor. Like, I was meditating and like all the parts were coming together, and that title just
Uh-huh.
like kind of like hit me in my heart. And I said it to my husband, and then I remember some people said to me, "So, what's a self-esteem doctor anyway?" And I literally
Yeah.
was like, I don't know yet. Like I'm still creating her, right? And it turns out, like you said, it was all those pieces. So even with your
Yeah.
children, as we see them having interests in the younger ages, like let them kind of explore that and hold on to it because it might become
Mhm.
part of something you can't even imagine yet. So like let
Mhm.
that grow as far as them being confident as kids for about who they are and what they're into already. Like
Yes.
that's a good start.
Exactly, exactly. When you follow what you're into, it can come back in ways you didn't even expect. And then you're doing something that is totally related to what you loved, but it's just completely unexpected. But you were just asking this question or mentioning that people are asking you this question, but like, what exactly is the self esteem doctor and what do you do on a day to day basis? Like, how do you most impact people? How do you help them concretely? Like, what tangible things do you do as the self-esteem doctor?
Oh, that's a great question. I love this. Okay. So, as a self esteem doctor, first of all, I should mention that it also incorporates my family element as well. So, I homeschool my own two children who are very well rounded, and they get the self esteem doctor as mom and as coach and as teacher
They're lucky.
and all. Right, so that's a part of my what my day looks like. But specifically, from the professional angle, I can be coaching one on one. I have clients who are international, so and national here in the U.S., and so I can literally be just doing Zooms and helping you. I feel like I'm the Uber of personal development, right? So you call me up and you're like, and I'm like, where are you, right? And you'll say, I don't like this. I'm scared of this. This is not working. I need direction, whatever it is. And I'm saying, okay, this is where you are. And then I help to drive you to the destination. I'm like, where do you want to be? Where do you want to go? And I'm there to Uber you emotionally and,
Love it.
mentally, spiritually to your destination. And so, in that way, my coaching does not entail a lot of tell me where you are now, tell me where you are now, tell me where you are now. I do need to know where you are now, but my intention is, where do you want to go? Where do you want to go? Where do you want to go? Because that's how, as the Uber, I'm going to get you there. Is I know where we are. I'm here. We just picked you up. I need to know where we're going. So day to day,
Love
that's
it.
what that can look like. And probably one of my favorite things to do is to get in front of an audience. So what you mostly will see me doing is traveling around and doing talks for, whether it's private talks for parents, moms, or organizations, schools, professionals. I've done corporate retreats. It's literally all about just how do we wake up that internal dialogue, that deeper self within, and create the pictures of what it is that we want and where we're going, and then make it actually happen. So my day looks like coaching, presenting, and then my favorite is that I have an online academy so that wherever you are, if I'm in the middle of coaching my own kids or if I'm on vacation, you can jump onto the Academy 24/7 and get real resources that are tangible and practical to actually help coach and guide you through whatever you need.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
and we'll definitely hope that everyone listening to this episode will get into the academy. But now I kind of want to dive more into I want to dive into the actual topic, which is importance of self-esteem. And specifically, we're talking about early childhood on this podcast. And you mentioned that you're talking to moms also and children. So we kind of approach both angles here on this show. So we talk a lot about children and babies and young children, but we also talk about mothers and post and fathers, parenting, postpartum depression. Like we've talked about it all. So I want to dive into it because I feel like now we've gotten to know you a bit. And could you maybe start off by telling us, in your opinion, why do you think self-esteem is so crucial, specifically in childhood and the early stages of life?
Absolutely. It is the fundamental self that we are taking through life. When we say things like, I'm going to do this, or I have to do that, or, I want whatever it is, that I is the fundamental piece of the puzzle. So if I say I want to be a doctor, well, do I feel that I qualify or have what it takes or deserve to be a doctor? If I say I want to be happy, well, who's the I in that sentence? And does she or he deserve to be happy? Right? It's very fundamental to what it is we're trying to accomplish. So sometimes we take the focus off of the I and who I actually am and start talking about the list of things we want to do. I want my kids to be happy. I want them to be successful. I want them to be, fruitful. I want them to have a great life. But if they don't know who they are and who's this I that's going to have this life, then there's an immediate block right there, an immediate roadblock to
Hmm.
progress. So
Yes.
I find it to be the fundamental element to all levels and all forms of success is, well, who am I, and do I have the tenacity, the faith, the belief, the understanding of my capacity, the willingness, the fortitude to go for what it is I want in this life, including happiness. And that is affected by your day-to-day everything. So for me, it is one of the number one things that we
Hmm.
truly need for success
Yes.
in this.
For sure, for sure.
Yeah.
How can parents positively influence self-esteem in their children, or how can they build up? Are there any practical tools they can use to build up that self-esteem in their children? Because I'm pretty sure if you ask any parent in the world, they'll tell you, "I want my child to be confident and happy and whatever." But they might not have the tools to help their children grow into confident and happy adults. So, are there any tools or any words of wisdom that you could give to all the parents listening about how they can implement, what strategies they can implement to build that self esteem up in their kids?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So, one of the most important, and it doesn't even necessarily require you having any like deep fundamental knowledge of self-esteem. I think this is one of the, I want to say simpler, but sometimes not easy, but simpler ways is truly you have to model it. Truly, we know our kids are watching us, and it's always like, do as I say, not as I do, but we know it's the opposite. We know they're watching what you do and they're copying and
Hmm.
not listening so much. So sometimes we have to become very aware that everything else that our children have learned from us, they watched us walk, they listened to us talk, we've modeled these things for them, and that's how they in many ways started to replicate what we do. And that self-esteem, that confidence, that dialogue, that what you say to yourself out loud, how much belief you have, all of that stuff is also being observed by your kids. So I think one of the simplest ways is for us to really project our own confidence in a way that our kids can observe. And I'll give you guys an example. if I'm standing in front of the mirror, my daughter right now is 13. If I'm standing in front of
Mhm.
the mirror getting ready, I will compliment myself in some way. And usually I'm super dramatic. I know you can't tell,
I love
but
it.
I'm like super dramatic. If my daughter's standing there and I'll be putting stuff on, and I'll say, wow, girl. And I'm like talking to myself in the mirror, and I'm like, girl, well, look you don't have hair, and I'm being dramatic. And my daughter's looking and she's smiling and she knows I'm overdoing it and I would never do that in public. And she knows that balance between like really acting like
Yes.
you're, the whole potato or whatever, or if you're just kind of playing around. But she looks at that, and sometimes I will see that when she looks in the mirror, she just leans more positive. She'll just be like, wow, mom, this lip gloss looks great on me. And I'm like, yeah, it
I
does,
love
honey,
it.
Right. So
Yeah.
it's just like modeling, because we will say things to our children, like, especially when they're older, you're beautiful, you're wonderful, you're smart, you're perfect, you can do it. But then when we go to do something, oh, what's wrong with me? How did I make this mistake? Oh my gosh, I'm getting so fat. I need to stop eating this. Like, what is wrong with me? And so
Mhm.
what we're saying to our kids and what we're modeling to them are so different
Yeah.
that they're, number one, a little confused, and number two, they kind of copy what we're doing rather than what we're trying to tell them that they should be and do. So that, I think, is one of the number one most important things that we can start
That's such a good piece of advice. And the example you gave is so telling because I know how hard it is to be 13. And I cannot imagine in the age of TikTok what it is to be 13. It's
with.
even harder than it probably was for previous generations. And everyone struggles at 13. It's not,
Yes.
you're not necessarily in the best headspace and things are weird and there's school and there's all these things. So having a parent at home that can really model the self-esteem that you can have yourself to you is it's priceless. Honestly, it's
Oh,
it's so amazing and I love the example you just gave. Um yeah,
thank you for
are
that.
there yeah, sorry.
So sorry, no, I just want to add one more thing. It's that
Yeah.
I just want to encourage the parents out there. Like, first of all, don't judge yourself. Anything that we give today, it's not a matter of like, oh no, I did it wrong. It's not that. I don't believe in a one size fits all. All families are different. All of our dynamics are different. I have the benefit of being home with my kids more because we homeschool. This is not
Yeah.
where we're going to compare and say, well, I can't do that. I don't have time. It's not that. It's just, what is our bigger picture? What's our bigger goal here? And we want to understand that when we're talking to kids, this is a little NLP part I'm going to throw in here. When we are
Love it.
using words and saying to our kids, like, you're amazing, you're beautiful, I want you to imagine that they're literally words. Like, imagine like a computer screen and just types words, and the words go in the kid's head, and they either have to memorize those words or those words kind of float right out their other ear, just for our visual or imagery here. But then I
Mhm.
want you to imagine that you're standing in front of, I don't know, your mirror, your bills, your whatever it is, a difficult task, you have brought your work home, whatever, and you're sitting there in front of that task and you're acting out. Now it's like a role play, you're acting out loud. Okay,
Mhm.
this is such a difficult project, but I know I got this. I'm going to work on this. Like, I'm going to just let me take 5 minutes of break. I'm going to go for a walk and then I'm going to come back and I know I got this. That is now a picture that your kids have. So I want you to imagine your child is watching you and they have the choice of memorizing like this typewriter, computerized digital words that just came in their head and flew out, or they have this imagery of mom or
Mhm.
dad sitting there and coaching themselves through their own work, trying to stay positive. Which one is going to stick with the child? That
I love it.
imagery. Yeah, that
Yes.
picture. So that's the benefit of building pictures. It's not, so that you can be like the best parent on the block. It's really trying to, how do I get this to stick in my kid's head so they can
Mhm.
use it as a tool?
I
Oh,
absolutely love this piece of advice. It makes so much sense. Of course, you're going to remember your mom sitting there and talking to herself more
yes.
than whatever she's telling you because, whatever parents are telling children, it just goes in one ear and out the other. Of course, it's way more impactful. And another topic that I love to discuss on this show, I mean, I love to discuss, I wish it didn't exist, but it's the guilt that is associated with parenting. And I've had a lot of guests, and it seems to be the number one thing that people struggle with and parents struggle with is the guilt, the mom guilt. Am I doing enough? Am I doing, am I doing things all right? Like, what am I, whatever, all the questions that they might have. So, do you have any tips on how to deal with mom guilt or with that terrible guilt feeling or just parent guilt in general? There could also be dad guilt,
Right.
but that terrible feeling of I'm not doing enough or am I doing enough? Is my child happy enough? Am I a good enough parent? Um, how can people deal with that internally? Um,
Oh man. Oh, you guys turn it up. Turn the volume up on this one. It is so good. So, from an NLP standpoint again, and I'm going to kind of
Hmm.
bridge in some metaphysical science here also, but the NLP concept that I want to use here is called chunking up. So, I'm going to really simplify it. The idea is that we're either really breaking down all the details and kind of overanalyzing everything, not in a positive way, or we can kind of get up to more like what's the purpose, get a little more general. Well, what's the purpose of all these things, like chunk up to the bigger picture. And what happens is when we are feeling guilt, it tends to be that we are down in the details and we're really analyzing and being critical and like wondering this and wondering that. We're doing a lot of negative what ifs. What if I didn't do enough? What if she's not happy? What if this happens? What if? And my biggest coaching advice here is number one, if you're going to play the what if game, you need to play it fairly. So what if I'm doing it wrong? Okay, be fair. Ask yourself that question. But then you need to ask yourself, what if I'm doing it right? Okay. And if you're like, what if my kid's unhappy? Sure, fair enough. But then you have to ask the other question. What if my kid is truly, truly happy? We keep playing this one-sided what if game and saying it's reality because I'm mulling over the negative. It's no more real to mull over the negative than it is to also mull over the positive. That is also real. So that's my number one thing is if you're going to go in the details, which is chunking down, then
Hmm.
at least be fair with your what ifs. Then my second piece of advice is don't just stop at the details, chunk up to the bigger picture. So let's say you are a mom who is working a lot and now you're like, oh my gosh, I'm working too much. Is my child missing me? Am I absent? What's going on? First of all, well, is my child inspired by how much I'm working? Is my child going to find her way by watching that mom is out there balancing? Is my daughter going to, or my son going to start to respect the fact that women are out in the workplace? Like, what positive impacts could I also be having? Better what ifs.
Yeah.
And then you chunk up to a higher purpose. What is the purpose of this? I'm loving on my children. I'm wanting to provide for my children. I'm being there for my children. I'm making the sacrifices for them. I want them to see, be, and know that there's more out there for them and they have these options. And I'm providing one of those options. And that can make me feel really proud or it can make me feel really guilty. And this is a
Hmm.
matter of what side of the coin do you pick up, right? Like it's the quarter's got heads, it's got tails. What side of the coin are you staring at? That's what you're going to feel the most. So be fair with your what ifs and then chunk up to the bigger picture of what it is that you are trying to accomplish and celebrate yourself a little bit more for those moments when you do accomplish those.
Exactly. Celebrate yourself for yourself, but then again,
Yes.
it's also showing your kids that you're celebrating yourself. So that
Yes.
builds up this image in their head as well. So it's all linked. I feel like everything
Yes.
makes sense.
100%. And then a little bit of faith on that metaphysical science side is where you can say, you know what, there is a deeper guidance system within all of us, and our kids have it also. So we can say, you know what, for those days that I do goof it up, for the days that I did work too much and I just really did not interact with my kids, I have those days also. I travel, I speak, I coach, I'm running the academy. And there's going to be days. What I literally say is to myself, I'm like, you know what, my kids also have an inner guidance system. And I definitely don't want this to be my norm where I'm just don't feel like I'm showing up, but I'm okay that this is how this day went. And I trust that they are guided and I trust that I've done enough to kind of help them and their guidance system kicks in and they're going to be okay. And then I have no problem going to my kids and being like, I feel so bad yesterday. I feel like I didn't talk to you guys. And because of what I've kind of helped put in my kids, they might say something like, yeah, well, you got to hang out with us today. And I'm like, fine, I'll make up to you. Right. Or they'll say, no, mom, it's okay. You really wanted to do that podcast for a long time. So, like, how did it go? Right. My
Yeah,
13-year-old asked me, like, how was it? Like, is it everything you wanted? Did you get to say
I love
everything you
it.
wanted? And so now she's a part of it. So even though I may have felt like I left them out to a certain degree, she's a part of it because I can recap with her. And my son will also ask
Hmm.
the same question. So there are ways around it where we can swap out guilt for productivity and for
Yes.
connection with our family.
Love
Yeah.
it. Love
Yeah.
it. And I just had this thought because we've been talking a lot about how do you model self esteem to your children or what do you say to your children? But there's also a whole world that the children live in where the parent is not involved. So, for example, the child can go to daycare, to school, you can have a babysitter, a nanny over, or whoever can be watching the child while you are doing something else.
Right.
And a lot of things can happen in that time where you, as the parent, are not present, obviously, because you're
100%.
working, you're doing whatever else. And so, do you have any advice on how you can prepare your children, I guess, for the outside world? Because in the end, they're one day they're going to move out and they're going to be faced with the outside world, anyways. But even when they're very small, they're already faced with people, or they have arguments at school, or they have their, a worst case children can get bullied, like all these terrible things can happen. And you as a parent you can't do anything about it because you're not even there. So how do you best set up children for success when they're faced with this terrible outside world? That could also be very nice, but
Right. Sometimes
sometimes
it's not.
it can be hard.
100%. So I have this analogy that I tend to use, actually, it's an activity sometimes when I'm doing one-on-one coaching with the kids or even in a group setting.
Mhm.
And the idea here is that we want our kids to feel already, let's use the word filled up
Mhm.
before or as they're entering the world, and realizing that it's not the duty of other people to quote unquote fill us up. We have to fill ourselves. And of course, and when
Love
you're
it.
younger, your parents help fill you. So, that's a little bit
Yeah.
different. But so the visual I like to give guys, okay, so picture this. If you're not driving, you can close your eyes. If you are driving, keep your eyes open, okay? But if you're not driving, close your eyes. And I want you to picture an ice cream cone. And
Mhm.
imagine that on that cone is your child's name, or it says the word me, right? So it's you, they're the cone. And I want to imagine that you're going to fill yourself up with something sweet. So you're going to like 3 scoops of ice cream. You know what? I'm capable, I'm powerful, I am smart, whatever it is. I'm
Mhm.
beautiful, I'm essential, I'm valuable, I'm important, I'm useful, whatever those words are. And you can do it 20, 20 scoops if you want.
Mhm.
The point here now is that you, as a person, your child has also filled themselves. And now when they enter the world, that cone that is them is already filled with something sweet. Everything else the world has to offer you are sprinkles. And that
Mhm.
way, when you go out, you're not saying, well, I'm an empty cone. Please fill me with sprinkles and let me feel full. You're not going to feel full. I mean, let's picture the ice cream cone with just
Yeah.
sprinkles on the bottom. You're like, no,
Yeah.
thank you. you know, give me some ice cream. So now with your children already being filled, they've got their scoops of ice cream. They go out into the world, and some people are throwing good stuff or bad stuff. We kind of let the bad stuff kind of roll off the edge of the ice cream,
Mhm.
and just kind of get off there. Stuff the sprinkles, we can let that stick. But the point we're
Mhm.
telling the kids is that you're not going out there to be told who you are. You're not going out there to be filled up by others. The job of filling yourself is yours. And then when you've got that best friend that tells you're amazing, then you can add that as a sprinkle. And when you have the person who says you're awful, you can say, well, I don't want that on my ice cream. Goodbye,
Mhm.
right? That doesn't belong here. And so their ability to discern gets a little bit stronger. Their ability to say, I'm not taking that because that's not true. I'm not ugly. I'm not stupid. I'm not fat. I'm not bad.
Mhm.
It's a little easier. Never fully easy, you guys. There's not like a thing that's going to make us not be human and just like smile when people are insulting us. I don't have that resource. If you do, call me, let me know. But so we're
Yep.
not talking about like never having feelings again. We're just talking about how much do I let that settle within like the cone that is me. And if I've already
Mhm.
filled myself, then you can't get to the core of me because
Yeah.
I have a little bit of a tool to deal with that. And so that's one of
Yeah.
the things I say is get yourself filled up before you go out there, and then you're able to balance better what is coming at you in the real world.
Mhm.
100%.
I love that. And, as you were just saying, though, it's not about replacing your emotions or anything, but it's about building a toolbox where we can like pull out tools whenever we need to
100.
help us deal with things a bit better. And you actually kind of already answered my next question that I was going to ask, which was how can you help a kid or a young child deal with rejection, deal with failure, deal with these difficult things that can really impact your self-esteem. So I was about to ask you that, but I feel like you already kind of answered with this ice cream cone analogy that I love of like this does not reflect who I really am. This is just like a sprinkle. Or there's another example that could be like a failure on a test or something that you're not successful at. Um, so yeah, I
I
was
still want
about
to
to
jump
ask.
in though. I still want to jump in. Can I jump in on that one just with one little
Of course,
explanation?
I would love to. I'm like, I already asked you, but please give me more wisdom.
I've got more, honey. I've got more for days. Can we talk for like 8 hours? I've got
Yeah, for sure. I love this topic.
Okay, so one of the things I think is super helpful when it comes to performance is to a certain degree, we're separating our true self. And this is back to a
Mhm,
little bit of the metaphysical piece. There's our true self, who is our being. And then there are the things that we are doing. So if I were to hold up 2 fingers and I say, like, one of these fingers represents me as the being, and then the doing is attached to it. If I do something and it doesn't work out, it's still separate. I can still feel like a powerful, wonderful, you know, perfectly divine, spiritual, whatever your beliefs are, being who had
yeah.
this occurrence. So I had a failure on the test, or I had an A on the test, or I didn't do well. But I, the true essence of I am still as amazing as I've always been. This is the doing attached to my being. So once I have that, it's easier to kind of separate and say, that was not a good performance, but I'm just gonna try it again and try it again, right? Do another thing. But when we attach our being to the doing, I am the A plus, I am the success. If I don't succeed, then I'm terrible. That's when we get in trouble because now there's no separation. Now it's I failed, and so I'm nothing. I didn't pass, so I'm nothing. So we want to be really careful with that our kids are not defining the being by the doing. Once you have a little separation there, then, and if you're looking at my fingers, if you get this video, you're going to see that I'm holding up this little demo here. But if we separate the being from the doing to a certain degree, then we able to say, you know what, I'm a beautiful, wonderful, amazing being, and I have a second
Hmm.
chance and I can cope with new doing and do it again and try it again. It doesn't reflect
Hmm.
who I am fundamentally. And that's so powerful to me.
That is so powerful. And we're talking about kids and children, but honestly, that applies to adults. I'm constantly struggling with what am I a failure if this thing I
Ah,
do fails? I'm constantly
right.
struggling with that. So it's not a kids thing, it's a lifelong thing. But the sooner we can instill that in kids, the better, honestly, I believe.
100%. Now you can just hold up the two fingers anytime something doesn't go well, and you're like, you know what? That was a this. I'm still awesome. Let me try that again, right? And then we get to like maintain our power throughout really difficult times because they will come. I mean, it's life, you know?
Yeah, it is life, but it's so important. And you have so many good visuals and analogies. I feel like from the Uber analogy to the ice cream cone to the fingers, it's all stuff that is very visual and that hopefully people can remember really well and also explain well to others. So I feel like that's also a lot of now, like talking to you, I feel like that's a lot of the power of like what you do is you're able to give us these mental images and then we're able to
Yeah.
keep them somewhere inside of our brain,
Yes.
and it's
Easier to
more than
reach for.
just words.
Yes, easier to recall, easier to use, and that's usually the power, you know, people would ask me all the time. I was really concentrated in a city called Aventura in Florida a couple many years ago, and
Mhm,
I pretty much saw all of the kids that lived in that city. They were just like at my doorstep. We were just it was a very busy, amazing time, and at the time I was doing all in persons, and the parents would constantly come to me. You saw her once. How did
mhm,
she make this change? You know, you saw my son twice. How is this working? He wouldn't go to the play date. How'd you get him to go to play date? She wouldn't do the sport. How'd you get her to walk on stage? How did you do this? And I'm like, visual. There was a picture she was holding in her mind that she couldn't, and the
yes,
body follows the picture. And also, then
of
we
course.
start talking about the emotion and turning up the heart, which is another element that I've added in. And then you start to see the picture changes in the mind relatively quickly, and then the body follows. So you can get
Mhm,
changes. I'm not promising everyone it's a 1 hour deal for everyone. We all have different layers and levels, but it is very feasible that you can do a 1 or 2 or 3 hour coaching, you know, with me, and you start seeing results because the pictures, you don't have to memorize anything. You don't have to, you know, do all
yep,
this like writing down. And yes, there's some
yeah,
processes. Yes, there's routines. Yes, there's habits to help you to stay in the zone. However, there's a really quick way to just reprogram that mental imagery. And we may have heard of mental
mhm,
imagery before. The mental images we're holding in our mind, they change the
mhm,
trajectory of our behavior. And that's where a lot of the progress comes from. And in
yeah,
fact, just a quick fun fact here, if
yeah,
you're interested in NLP, neuro-linguistic programming,
yeah,
one of the elements of it is called NLP modeling. And when
mhm,
Richard Bandler, Dr. Bandler and Dr. Grinder, when they first started and developing NLP, what they said was, let's look at the people who've been successful and let's find out what their brain is doing to be successful. How did they get success? And then let's use that as the
mhm,
model and duplicate that in other people. So we now not just behavioral model, but what's happening in your head. And this is a fun example. If you're into this, you're going to love this.
mhm,
One of the stories is that they went to an artist who would be able to, like, you know, look at a mountainside scene or whatever and draw it like, wow, amazing.
mhm,
And they said, how did you do that? And they were like, the artist, like, I don't know. And they're like, no, no, no. If you knew, go into your brain. If you knew what you were doing, tell us what you're seeing, doing, thinking. Is there a trick? Is there a game? Like, just go in your
mhm,
mind. And they kind of had a little bit of a hypnotic conversation. And the artist ended up saying, oh, well, now that I'm tuned in, I'm realizing I imagine there's a string tied to my pencil to the
okay.
mountain or to the tree or whatever, and I'm basically just tracing it. Well, now that is something you can model and you can duplicate. If you want to do
Mhm,
art, you can say, okay, imagine you have a string tied to that particular thing, and now just trace it. Most of us can trace. So all of a
yeah,
sudden, you become this great successful artist, or at least better at art than you were by simply shifting the picture you have in your mind and the way you're approaching it. So it's so powerful. Obviously, you can tell I'm in love with all this.
I love this. And the story you just mentioned also talks about the other side of things, which is we're asking the artist, how do you do that? And the artist says, I have no idea how I'm doing that. So it shows how the mental things are sometimes so ingrained that we're not even capable of
Yes.
like taking a step back and understanding why we're doing what we're doing. But once someone
Yes,
opens that door for us, we're able to like access it and be like, and that could be applied to here it's a positive thing, like painting beautifully, but it
for
could be
sure.
applied to negative things. Like, why are you doing that? I don't know why I'm thinking that way. And then if someone helps you open that door, then you can like start becoming aware of like, oh, it's because I'm attaching the string to that negative thing. Um,
Exactly. Oh, so good.
and that's huge. So this illustration, this little story is amazing. It shows how like deeply things can be ingrained in our brains, and sometimes it doesn't take much to like change it, but you need
Oh,
someone who's exterior to like open that door for you because you are not able to kind of see it yourself. Do you
100%.
do that a lot with people you coach? Like just opening a little door and being like, hey, did you realize that you're thinking
Absolutely.
this negative thought because XYZ? And the person's like, whoa, I never thought
Yeah,
of it that way.
100%. 100%. I get it on both angles from the is this possible why you're doing that? Or did you know you were even doing that? Sometimes it's not even why or how, it's that. Like, did you realize you were doing that?
Yeah.
And it's like, wait, no, am I? Wait, oh my gosh. And sometimes they'll start to trace it back to why, because I may not know. And then I do it on the other side too is, well, this is the thing you want to accomplish. All right, let's go
Hmm.
ahead and imagine the accomplishment of it. Or they're holding on to childhood stories. If you're an adult and you're holding on to a
Hmm.
childhood story, I'll say, let's go back to your childhood and like, let's rewrite it. Let's pretend you handle it differently. How would that have been? And then how would you feel now? And we bridge this gap, and I literally watch people sit in front of me from like a cowering over kind of like back in that childhood state to like, oh no, I handle it better. It's just the pictures change, and it's so cool. It's really, really amazing. So I love
Oh
it
my
so
gosh. I
and
feel
kids
like
are the
honest.
best. Kids love it so much because kids are with the
Hmm.
imagination. They just turn it right up. And so
Yep.
you're like, hey, can you picture this? And they will take it to the
Yeah.
moon. And then you're like, that's all you needed. So it's really cool.
Maybe that's a lesson we can take from this chat today is that kids' imagination is a lot more malleable than adults because they've been, I guess, they've seen the world a bit less and they're, I don't know why exactly, but if your kid is still a kid, you can probably help him or her to like form their imagination and instill those positive images in them. So it's great actually. It's a great time to help them with their self-esteem. Um
100%.
yeah.
If I want to jump in on, you talked about that sometimes we've got people in the early childhood stage, like they're just maybe babies even. And I just wanted to touch briefly in case you're listening and you're
Mhm.
thinking to yourself, like, well, I gotta wait for my kid to eat. Like, you don't have to wait. You don't have
Yep.
to wait. I want to let you know personally, everyone thought I was crazy, and that's possibly true. But here's what I was doing when
We
my
all wanna
daughter,
hear it.
when um, when my daughter was literally just, I don't know, just months old, like I'm talking 2, 3 months, I was already guiding her with any little thing that I was doing. And it wasn't important to me that she was like trying to answer me. She's 2 months. Like, what is she
Mhm.
going to say? But for me, I recognized I imagined, again, using my own imagination, that her brain was like a white blank canvas, right?
Mhm.
And that every word that I would say to her, every picture I would paint, every lesson I gave, I just imagined was on this canvas. And I imagine that in the early stages, she may not be able to read the canvas, understand the canvas, but it's there, it's being painted. And that
Yeah.
one day she'd be able to quote unquote recognize or interpret the canvas paintings that I placed there. And then they would all start to make sense. And that's exactly what I felt has unfolded in our lives, is that I would be talking to her, I'm like, this is a wipe. It's wet, it's cold, it's the color white. I'm reading to her, I'm spelling to her. She's like 3 months old, but I'm having fun.
Mhm.
I'm not like, you're gonna be a genius. No, I'm just having fun
Mhm.
talking to her. She's a person. And I recognized her as a person even at 2 months old. And so from there, when it was time to get into homeschooling, and I don't want to ruin it for those of you who thought I was just some homeschool precious princess queen mom that what no, 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 that's not what happened. What happened was
Mhm.
I couldn't put her in school because my 4-year-old was already reading. And I was like,
Mhm.
you can't go to pre-K. They're going to teach you ABC and you're already reading. So I guess I
I
have to
love
keep
this.
you home, right? So that's how homeschooling started, was out of like, oops, like You know too much. And so I want to
Yeah.
use that as an encouraging story for you guys to say, no matter what age they are, you can start modeling in front of them. Your baby's laying there in a little bouncy thing and you're getting ready, and maybe you're not feeling your best moms, you just gave birth. I want you to say, well, thank you, body. You don't have to lie. Don't lie in front of your babies. They know, they're going to sense it.
Yeah.
Don't say, I'm so beautiful. And you're like crying, right? Don't say that if you don't feel it. But definitely, like, thank your body. The baby's in a bouncy thing. You don't think they have a clue what's going on, but you paint on the
Mhm.
canvas of their minds. Well, thank you, body. Look at this baby you helped me bring forward. I'm just excited that you are healthy and strong and you were able to do that. Look at my body go. And I'm just going
Yeah.
to keep loving on you until you bounce back to where I would like you to be. But it's all about love and gratitude. And your baby's there hearing that. Do they know what you're talking about? Not really,
No.
but that canvas is being painted. And if you keep that up for your baby, you're keeping that up for yourself. And that will become
Mhm.
the language you speak and love on yourself. And then your own self esteem is raised. And as this baby becomes a young child and then a preteen and then a teen, you will be more in a habit of speaking like that to yourself. And they will have a very robust canvas of self love that they've watched from you when they didn't even know what they were seeing. So don't think
Mhm.
that it's too early to start painting that picture for them right away.
You exactly answered the question that I was about to ask. That was about to go into the postpartum side of things.
Ah,
And yes, 100%. Like, no baby is too young. Obviously, they don't understand words when they're just born, but they understand feelings and
yes.
emotions. They understand being nurtured and being, attended to, and their needs being met. And they understand the driver behind it, like the positivity or the negativity.
Yes.
And obviously, don't beat yourself up if you're struggling with terrible things like postpartum depression or things that prevent you from being there, but love on
100.
whatever you have to give, I guess, is the answer.
I
um
agree with that 100%. And,
yeah.
sometimes, we think that loving on ourselves means that we have to find everything so beautiful and stunning and we have to
Hmm.
feel like a model. It's not that. Sometimes it's functionality. If you are, I don't know, let's say you don't like your smile very much or something. It's not about pretending and lying to yourself and trying to lie that you like your smile. But if you're able to eat, you can definitely say, I'm so thankful that I'm able to eat. I'm able to speak with this mouth. I'm able to chew with this mouth.
Hmm.
I'm able to swallow. Like, this is a part of survival. So, you know what? I'm thankful that this is at least working. And you start to find the gratitude where you can. And as you build that, it actually works a little bit like a muscle to a certain degree. Those pictures get stronger in your mind. Then your heart
Yeah.
centeredness will increase because you're now, and there's science behind gratitude. It's not just like, oh, yeah,
Yes.
be grateful.
Yes.
As you turn up that science behind gratitude and feel that, you're going to start to reframe some of the pictures in your brain. You're going to start to send new neurological connections in your brain where you'll start to be able to start finding beauty in things you never thought were so beautiful before. And
Hmm.
you're just going to feel better about who you are physically, spiritually, mentally, emotionally. And that will continue to cascade down to your children. It is a win, 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 win. And I'm not talking about perfection, and I'm not talking about lying, and I'm not talking about pretending, and I'm not talking about 24/7. I'm talking about doing the best you can. Each moment that it
Hmm.
occurs to you, do the best you can for both you and your family. And once you're doing the best, that heart centeredness of trying to just do your best when you can, not compared to my best, not compared to your sister, your cousin, your neighbor's best, but just your best. The intentionality behind that is ridiculously empowering. And you can lean into that and be like, I did good today. I said one positive thing and I'm proud of myself. That's it. Right. I said none today, but tomorrow I will. And I feel proud of that. Right. Like, just keep cheering yourself on. Be a best friend to yourself. That's one of my biggest lessons I like to teach is the way a friend would talk to you and you would not say, yeah, you're right, girl. Like, you're fat and awful. You would not say that. Right. You would say, girl, don't talk like that. Like, we all love you. You're wonderful. You need to be a best friend to yourself and let your kids
Yeah.
see that as
Wow, such wise words, and what a great way to answer this question. And to close up today's episode, it's been such an honor to have you on. I have learned so many things, and I hope everyone listening has learned so many things as well. As a last little nugget, could you tell us all where we can find you, if we want to connect with you, if we want to join your community, if we want to work with you? Tell us everything of like how to connect and how to find you. Of
Absolutely. First of all, thank you so much for having me. This has been
course.
such a wonderful talk. I always just the interviewer, like, you bring out the best, and it really helps for the audience. And the audience, I feel like your energy already has just pulled out the best. And so we're sharing a really amazing time together here. So thank you for that. You
Yeah.
can find me at the Self-Esteem Doctor, all spelled out, THE, and then self-esteem and doctor all spelled out That's on Instagram at the Self-Esteem Doctor, TikTok, all the things. And I want to make sure you know that there is a gift that I have for you. When you join my academy, there is a library that is free, and it just starts to give you little tips and videos and tidbits and printables that you can start using right away to help you. And it's in alphabetical order, and it's totally, totally free. Just have to join the community. So that's the Self-Esteem Doctor Academy.com. It's going to be easier if you just go to the self-esteemdoctor.com and branch out from there to everything you need. So the
Perfect.
self-esteemdoctor.com. That's me.
And we'll link everything in the description anyway, so it will all be very easily accessible. Well,
Yeah.
Dr. Simone, thank you so, so, so much from the bottom of my heart for being here and for sharing your precious knowledge and your time with us. And I wish you a great rest of your day. And thank you again.
I received that. Thank you. And I return it to you. Thank you for having me.
Of course.